Right, if you're an agent and you've ever had a deal absolutely flying, only for it to get torpedoed by the survey, this episode is for you. Because let's be honest, most sales don't fall apart because of the house. They fall apart because of panic, poor interpretation, and weak expectation setting. Today, I'm joined by Daniel Knight, aka Dan the Surveyor Man on TikTok. And this isn't a surveyor versus agent conversation. This is about understanding what actually kills deals, why some survey reports create chaos, why others create clarity, and what elite agents do differently before, during, and after the survey to protect the sale. We talk down valuations, level 2 versus level 3, copy and paste survey culture, and why risk tolerance matters more than most people realise. If you're serious about controlling your pipeline, not just celebrating sales agreed, you need to understand how surveyors think. This one is not fluffy. Let's get into it. Right, so Daniel, what issues do you see most often when, or issues that otherwise kill perfectly good sales, and which are generally structural, like genuinely, and which are buyer panic that we shouldn't really be worried about?
So I'm going to change your question slightly, because it's not necessarily the issues that are the problem, it's the surveyors. So if the issue is the issue, it's about diagnosing it correctly. So if you have a surveyor that is incompetent in understanding damp, or is incompetent in understanding structural movement, or has a boss that doesn't let them, maybe they're cranking out 8 surveys a week, they don't have the time to go back and reflect and think, let me give my client some real nuanced guidance, then they're going to scare them. And then that is when things collapse, because they see a minor crack. They don't have the time to sit there and go, well, what are the factors at play here? They just say, get a structural engineer, and then they're panicking. Or they don't have the time on site to put in the effort to go find something out. Yesterday, I was at a property, chimney breast has been removed. When I first went up into the loft, I put it as a restriction, there's a bunch of stuff up here, I can't see if it's got any supports. Once I did some more digging, I was like, do you know what, I really need to get in there. So I started moving things around and I managed to climb through, being a bit agile, Spider-Man-like, but I got to see it and it didn't have supports. So those things matter, and just making the effort. So I would say it's not got less to do with the issue, more to do with the surveyor and the quality they're producing.
Yeah, because I see a lot of your videos on TikTok, on my For You page, that for me are so massively helpful. It's like, wow, I never knew that. I never knew that. And I do see you diving into the nooks and the crannies, and doing some really thorough investigation. Is that to try and make sure you're not necessarily future-proofing yourself from a business perspective, which obviously is that professionalism, but maybe to stop conversations or having those hard and horrible elements up front and centre first, backed by some serious investigation, so you're not having hard and horrible conversations with the buyer who may be panicking about nothing later?
I think there's parts to that where I want to do a thorough inspection, because for my own safety, showing that I've done a thorough inspection helps. But it is just trying to see everything you can. And the annoying thing about being a residential surveyor doing pre-purchase surveys is you're not going to see everything. So when I explain things to clients, I say that, well, I would say the people don't know what a survey is. So a survey is a residential surveyor's opinion on a property on the day of inspection. It's not a warranty. It's not a guarantee. Yes, you can sue a surveyor if they really mess up, but realistically, as long as they do a decent job, they're pretty well protected in that sense. But my job is to provide a risk analysis to you of your purchase. So to do that, I try to see as much as I can, but there's only so much I can see. So I use the analogy that I'm a GP of surveying. If you go to the GP for a physical, they might tap your knee, they might look in your ear, up your nose, but you're not getting an MRI. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like, I can't lift floorboards, I can't open up the walls, I can't guarantee every single nook and cranny of this place doesn't have, let's say, rot or beetle infestation or whatever. But right now, it looks pretty good. And at the same time, from the moment a house is built, it's deteriorating. There are going to be issues. And I talk about this with first-time buyers a lot, where you haven't had to pay maintenance costs up till now. You've had to pay rent, but now you have a whole new world, which is maintenance costs that you have to be prepared for. Flat roofs they're known to be troublesome. That's not me just arse covering. That's me saying like, no, like you're probably going to get a leak in a flat roof at some point if you are here for 20 years. So it's setting that expectation as well. So, but that's part of it. Like, in my opinion, part of my job is that consultation where I'm saying, these are the costs you need to account for. While some surveyors might go into a property and go, windows open, close, they're fine. I was saying, okay, well, these windows, their fence certificates were dated this, the average life expectancy is this. You can anticipate at least replacing the glass like in the next 5 to 10 years. And at least then they're expecting it. While if you are just going and go, yeah, it's fine. It's like, yeah, it's fine now, but we want to talk more about the future.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. And that I think is so important. There's a house that's just about to complete that I sold or agreed the sale of just at the tail end of last year. And on my property description, in the video, to all the buyers I spoke to on the phone when they were calling up to ask to go and see it, I was like, right, just so everyone knows, there is no uncertain terms. This house has 0 gas central heating. There is no boiler in the house. There's no radiators in the property. The fuse box is likely to be needed to be replaced. And there are the electrics and what they were when the house was built in the 1950s, right? So if you're making an offer on this, I want you to know absolutely everything before you make this offer. So when the surveyor comes along and says, there's no gas central heating, there's no radiators, the fuse box needs replacing, and the electrics may need to be redone, right? I don't want, you cannot come back to me and say, I want a price reduction off the back of what we're offering now, because you know it all. And interestingly, guess what happened? The surveyor come back and said, no gas central heating, no radiators, the electrics, blah, blah, blah. And the buyers were like, no problem. Do you know what I mean? It's not even an issue. The only thing that was wrong, and it goes back to the point that you made earlier in the start of the podcast, is that the surveyor did bring up 2 things. One was the guttering was needed to be, I don't know what their term was they used, but basically needed to be flushed out. And also it was probably needed to be replaced. And also on the chimney stack, there was it called a culling or something, or whatever, a cowling that goes on top. Yeah, it goes on the top. So basically he said that was missing. The problem is with that, I think they are probably doing the 8 surveys a week. And that was a copy and paste job, because the owner is a builder. And he was like, John, you can see the cow or whatever it's called up there. And the guttering, we all know that's brand spanking new. And there is no problem. Do you know what I mean? So again, it was that element of it. But the buyers, though, no stress. Absolutely 0 stress, because they knew what was coming. But why do you do that, though? Why do you take the time to do that? Why aren't you doing 8 surveys a week, for example?
I could be. And a lot of people, like, that's the thing. It's like, so it's a business model thing, which we can get into. It's like a level 2 survey, call it £500. A level 3 survey is, call it £1,000, a little bit more maybe. To a client, that's a lot of money. But to a surveyor, the difference in value or time and effort you have to put in between a reasonably okay level 2 and a thorough level 3 is 3-4x the effort. So like, I do 3 level 3s a week and I'm writing reports on the weekends. Meanwhile, like, you could get through 5 level 2s a week fairly comfortably. So 5 level 2s, you make 2,500 a week. Or you can do 3 level 3s and make kind of the same. But then they don't do 5 level 2s. They'll do 8, 10 and send out who knows what. So you can do that, but it's the game of how can I make enough money to then, when the claims come in, I've made enough money that it doesn't really matter. And I'll pay off the claim and my insurance will cover it. So It's a ridiculous game they play. And I take a lot of pride in my work. I don't want my clients to be unhappy. I wake up every day dreading an email from a client saying, we found something that you missed, because like, I've been in issues in my life where I've had like traumatic issues, and nothing hits as hard as that email, because you go, I've let someone down in the one thing they wanted me to do. So that's why I'm as thorough. That's why I take as long to write the reports. And a lot of that has to come with reflection time. So like, when people go like, okay, well, why can't you do that many reports that quickly? What if you have AI and all these things? It's like, I've implemented AI. I've done all these things. But the concern is the reflection time. The bottleneck is me going, okay, what do I want to tell you about this? And what is reasonable to tell you about this? It is easy to go into a roof, see no underlay, and go, oh, it's an old roof, get a new one. But if you do that on a Victorian house where it never had an underlay, it's been like that for 100 years, how are the tiles? Are they in decent condition? And what is the risk appetite of the client? Do they expect to have a new build house? Or are they like, okay, well, I can budget for that? So a lot of it is bespoke to the client. And that's something that can be frustrating over the phone as well when they're asking me questions like, well, is there anything I should worry about? And I'm like, you tell me. It depends on your risk tolerance. It's like I've had properties where I'm like, I would never buy this place. But they're like, oh, I plan on knocking all that down anyway. It's fine. It's like, okay. And then I've had properties where I found a little leak from a bathtub and they go, no, I want a house that's perfect. I don't want to do anything. Like if they're elderly or if they just don't want to have to deal with these things. So,
But
yeah.
No, I was saying I think that is so important anyway. So what you're actually saying is you treat every property, well, every property is different and you're treating every scenario appropriately, is
As if I
basically
was
what you're
buying the
saying.
house. I want to tell you, like, what you're paying for is someone who has been in hundreds of properties, understands where things go wrong, and you're paying them to look at this house as if they were buying the house and telling you everything they can possibly know about this place. Two, that is within reason. I'm not going to tell you about if the skirting board's scuffed because that's just going to waste your time. But the big things, I will be there to answer about genuine risk, and the little things, which can actually amount to a big thing because it can be like a death by 1,000 cut scenario, we can go through. And then, like you said, with agents, what has been disclosed, what hasn't been disclosed, which is normally my advice, was like, okay, well, what has the agent told you about? If the agent could come forward and say, we know there's this has been diagnosed, like you said, with the electrics and the gas, if the agent said that, then that means they've priced the property likely to include that. So you can't go back and start renegotiating. Now, if I come back and say we've got penetrating damp in this location and it's a traditionally built property and it has not been maintained to proper breathable standards, and you're suffering from these issues that you are going to have to resolve one day, maybe there's some negotiation room there, then that's a discussion to have. But again, like depends on who's selling the place. If it's a probate sale, then you might be able to renegotiate a bit easier. But if they need the money to buy the next place, then you're stuck. So all these things, that's why I don't talk a lot about renegotiation, because it is so unique and it's so precise to the sale.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as you quite rightly say, every property is different, must be treated appropriately, which is pretty much one of my 12 rules that I stand by. And going back to the point about, well, you could do 8 surveys in the week, but you decide not to because you want to actually reflect on something. For me, I'm the same. If somebody said to me today, John, I want you to get my property on the market, the first viewing, if I could fit them in, the first viewing will be 4 weeks from today. And that is because we are doing 2 weeks worth of the legal side behind the scenes to make sure we've got a full contract package. So the buyer's solicitor has no excuses about actually when they do things, right? But also from a marketing perspective, we are lifting up so many stones to see what's underneath them to make sure on the portals, across brochures, on the website, on video, that we are really truly marketing this property and positioning it as it really should, versus rushing and then I'm costing my client loads of money. Yeah, which is what I don't want to do, which actually brings me on nicely into my next question for you. And I don't know if you can answer this, right? I'm hoping you can. But when surveyors, because agents get really annoyed with this, right? But I understand why surveyors do it. But when surveyors downvalue a property, how much is that is data-driven versus professional judgment? And where do agents usually misunderstand that process?
So I don't do valuations, but I have trained to do valuations, and where I used to work, I helped with valuations. So I can kind of comment on it. The most frustrating thing about learning to do valuations as a surveyor is people will tell you it's an art, not a science, where there is a lot of oohs and ahs about different aspects. Now, there are like key elements that you do adjust for, obviously, but ultimately it's comparables the same way an agent would. And a lot of times surveyors call agents to see if something sounds reasonable. And it is what evidence, because at the end of the day, they have to submit their valuation with evidence. And if they don't have that evidence to support it, then they don't have it. And a lot of the time, from the valuers I talk to, they basically look at the price that it's going for, and it's like, can I justify this number? It's not. They don't want to, like you say, down value. Surveyors would argue that there's no such word because you're just valuing. But they don't want to do that. They don't want the headache. They don't want the queries. They would like to just give you the house, but but they work for the bank. Every bank's terms are different, which as well can be very frustrating. And they got to do what they think's best. And I'm sure when they sit there and they know it's like there's an offer for a certain price and they have to value it under, I just know they're like, their heart sinks and they're like, this is going to be a headache, but they can't get away with doing anything else, because if they did do that, then, and that came back to bite them, they wouldn't have the comparables to justify it.
Yeah. And that is the biggest thing for me. And it does really irritate me when, you know, I see, like I was speaking to one seller today, right? So I'm bringing their property to market on the 21st of Feb, and they're looking to buy another property that's really quite close to them. But there's not a shred of evidence to suggest that where the agent has pitched it on the market, that is not nowhere close. And I am trying to find all the comparables for them so they can make an informed decision about what offer they actually make. Yeah, I'm trying to help them find out as much about that seller and why that seller's selling. But equally, just because the seller is looking to sell and they want a certain figure, well, if there's no evidence to support that, my question is to my client, my soon-to-be client when we come to market, but my question is through me to them, to the agent, what happens if the property gets downvalued? Because who's going to make up the shortfall? Who's going to make up the shortfall from where the offer actually is to where the down value has actually happened? And the down valuation is because the surveyor cannot find any evidence. Now we're all spending loads of money on solicitors and those surveys for it to only fall out of bed. And I'm like, what is the point in that? So when agents say, oh, yeah, the surveyor doesn't know what they're talking about, I'm like, well, they've probably got a lot more up-to-date information in terms of who's actually making offers on property than maybe me. You know what I mean? And I use, a mixture of Rightmove. So, for example, I'm looking at the nuances. What is actually on the market in a bracket? For example, if it's, a semi-detached house, 3-bedroom or 4-bedroom, it's between 350 and 450. What's actually happened in that market, not only over the last 18 months, but how much competition does that house actually have right now today? Because, of course, more competition, more saturated, less valuable in most instances. Not always the case, but a lot of time that is. And it sort of irritates me where agents don't think about the actual value they're marketing the property for, because you could have a perfectly good buyer, doesn't really know the area, is looking at that detached house in Sheffield for 400 grand when they could maybe get a flat in prime central London or a studio for 400 if they were very, very, very lucky. So they think 400 is cheap for a detached house. But actually in Sheffield, that 400 may actually be very expensive, when really the real money, say 350. So I do get slightly irritated with the agents and the way they go about their business, which is their business model. Say things that sound nice, get the instruction, a lot of them. And then we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it and hope for the best.
So I get the argument. Like there's a good argument to be made saying something is worth what something is worth what someone else is willing to pay for it. But when the bank might be the one having to resell it at some day, it's not.
Exactly, because ultimately they have, like I always talk about, the good opinion of other people. And generally speaking, the good opinion of other people is the bank of mum and dad, Terry down the pub, Catherine at the water cooler, and times 2 for both husband and wife or partners, right, buying that property. So there's so many different opinions. But the one that really actually matters is the bank. And that, because ultimately they're not gonna want to lend on something they don't think they can't get their money back with.
And there's some real silly things as well. Like I had a client call me. I did the survey before they got the mortgage valuer in, and it needed work, but there was nothing that was like terrible. And I've done properties that were much worse that got a mortgage, no problem. They zero valued the mortgage just because the pane of glass by the front door was broken and it was a security risk. And it's like, okay, fix the pane of glass. Like, just tell him that. Like, come on. Like, And then they're calling me and I'm looking through my notes and I'm like, no, I can't imagine. I don't do valuations. Like, it depends on the bank's guidance, but there's nothing here that jumps out to me. It has a kitchen, it has all these things. And I was like, I don't understand. And then I didn't hear from them forever. I had to chase them. And they're like, yeah, that was why. I was like, ridiculous.
And versus get that sorted before you exchange contracts, right?
Yeah. But as well, you might go to thinking you're going to 3 different banks to get a different mortgage. It's like, oh, well, they said zero value. I'll go to a different one. It might be the same value going out, depending, because the value works for multiple banks.
Exactly that, which is why it's so important for sellers out there and for agents. Just pitch it correct in the first instance. Just do that. And the mad thing is, there's actually a second part to that phrase. So a property is only worth what someone's willing to pay. The full phrase, which is a property is worth what someone is willing to pay, is worth more to multiple buyers. And what's really interesting, because buyers are not stupid, a lot of them are more knowledgeable than the estate agent showing them, because the buyer is seeing more property online than the actual agent is actually seeing face to face, because obviously the buyers are going for all these different agents, negotiators trying to get deals done. Those agents are telling those buyers what the real money is. So then when a property comes to market at the real money, it looks like that, has that been undervalued or is that being sold cheap to everyone else? But to buyers, it's like, oh my God, get me there now, which is how then you drive the price up beyond market value, which is how you get it valued up. Because if you're able to prove to the surveyor, look, I've got 5 offers on this house. I had 16 viewings. This has gone under offer within like 15 days of coming to market. That surveyor would be more likely to go, do you know what? Actually, yeah, I can see that, and sign it off. No guarantees, but that's probably likely what is to happen. So far we're covering, do the survey, I always say level 3. Anyone asks me, I'm like, do the best you can get. That's what I say. If you're buying a property, do the best you can get. Don't, there's no guarantees that, like you said, that the surveyor is not going to miss something, because you can miss something, right? But ultimately do the best money could buy. But what do you think, right, the best agents do before, during, and after a survey that materially improves the chances of a deal completing?
Set expectations. So before, set expectations, speak to the seller, make sure they know what's happening. The amount of times I show up and I already had a surveyor come around. I'm like, that was the mortgage valuer. And there's like, oh, well, how long are you going to be here for? And I've already told the agent I'm going to be like 2 to 4 hours. And they're like, 2 to 4 hours? Like, I've got to pick the dog up at whatever. I was like, yeah, sorry. So prepping that, access, making sure that we can get to where we need to get. I'll do what I can, but if there's a giant piece of furniture underneath a loft hatch, we're in trouble. And if the loft hatch is broken, we're in trouble. And it's like, great, now I'm annoyed because I've just lost a day's work because I'm going to have to come back. And you're annoyed because now we've just lengthened out the sale. Just pull the loft hatch down. Make sure it can come down. Keys, doors, windows. A level 3, they'll want to open pretty much everything. So make sure that but just little things that like smooth it out. During, like we said with electrics, gas, there's no report will ever come back like a clean bill of health. A good report should always have something, at least as far as maintenance is concerned. So especially with the services, because a lot of companies, what will be like just procedure is to put anything that can kill you in the property that they haven't tested, because they're not gas engineers or electricians, they will put that as a CR3. So they will be saying, get that checked. Unless there is like a very recent gas certificate and electrical certificate, they aren't taking that risk. So have that prepared for the buyer to say, like, these will come back as reds. And I put that in every email when I send a report to say, like, these were reds just for this reason, so they don't panic. Because I know what my buyers do. What my clients do, they'll get the report, they'll go straight to what's red, and they'll go straight to those sections and read them. And then there's been times when I'm sitting there going, do I make this a CR2 or a CR3? Yes, it is minor, or it doesn't have to be fixed right now. But I know if it's not a red, they might not read it. And then and then they're going to be calling me in 3 years going like, you didn't tell us about this. I'm like, it's right there. So it's difficult on that front. So during there's not well that was during it's access, keeping things smooth, and then after the debrief on both sides, like we said earlier, with presenting everything you know that's wrong with the property in a clear way to say like these things have been considered in the value of the property, and then they can draw a hard line between what the agent knows and what they don't know. Um, and then you can negotiate because like the main things for negotiations are roofs, like a clay concrete roof from like 1930s, a little bit earlier. They're kind of reaching the end of their lifespan, and we built a lot of homes in the 30s. So there's a lot of properties coming up now that are like, you need a new roof. And then this is probably why it's super important to have a good surveyor as well, because the surveyor has no conflict of interest in this. They have a conflict of interest to cover their own backside, but they don't have the conflict of interest to sell you anything. So, like I said with the roof, if you send a roofer in to a roof with no underlay, it is very easy for them to say you need a new roof. But a surveyor might go like, no, like maybe you don't need a new roof right now. So with all of these things, yes, you might want the trade to come in, which if they are a good trade, they'll be honest, but that can be difficult when they make money if you do more work. So yeah.
No, I agree.
Ramble.
No. I agree because I'm always saying on the TikTok channel and even on my email list, you know, to buyers and sellers, who's got the axe to grind? Who's got the axe to grind? And that surveyor, you've already paid the surveyor the money. There's no axe to grind. They're getting paid. Like for me, I don't get paid until the property completes. So I could fall into the trap of saying things that sound nice to win the instruction, but that makes me ill, so I can't do that, right? So it's not my business model, and that's so again, it's what is it? Whoever's going to be cost the most by what they tell you is likely to be the one that's telling the truth. Yeah, in the sense that they are being, well, I'm not worried about what I'm saying. I'm just going to tell it anyway because ultimately I've got a reputation and I believe in my reputation. And like you said, about making sure that you're doing your job correctly, that property I contacted you about with the actual, the Japanese knotweed, and I'm saying, Daniel, can I get your opinion on this, please, before I take this property to market? Again, I'm doing that deliberately because I know that you're not going to give me any bullshit. And if you'd have said, mate, it's a problem, then I would have steered well clear of it. But when I know that I can absolutely trust in what you say, I can trust in your videos you put online, the content you put out there, I'm like, right, I can trust that. Not that I'm the expert, but it gives me maybe a little bit more of an understanding about something I have very little knowledge about, which makes it then really easy for me to set the tone early. So I'm now not worried about all the crap that comes out later. For example, that Japanese knotweed, when the sellers purchased this property back in 2021, the actual surveyor, I don't know whether they were looking for it or not. And to be honest, when it was only pointed at, if it wasn't pointed out to me, I would never have seen it either, right? Untrained eye. But it wasn't picked up in the survey when they purchased the property.
It's very common. It's like
yeah.
in winter, like this time of year, good luck trying to tell the difference between Japanese knotweed and any other plant in an entire garden. And I'm not a botanist, I'm a surveyor.
Yeah.
So like I will look for immense shrubs of Japanese knotweed, but the chances of there being one little thing of Japanese knotweed there, then like, yes, that could be a problem. Like I've done surveys with bamboo. Bamboo people don't really think about, but bamboo's just as invasive. And I've seen it literally run across gardens. So that's a problem. And then, but it's like, okay, like how far away is it from the house? Like it's being realistic with these things more so than, oh my God, Japanese knotweed, the house is going to fall down because it's right there. It's like, it's a plant. It's like, you can kill it. You can make a plan. And like you said, a management plan. And a lot of these things, especially like young surveyors, I'm a young surveyor, but newer surveyors, like we learn from textbooks, we try to think about how things, but we don't think about how things work. And we don't think about like things holistically. And it's like, okay, we think Japanese knotweed bad. And then you're scanning every garden you see for Japanese knotweed. But it's realistic. If you're in a property with 20 acres, do you need to go check the farthest acre away to make sure there's no Japanese knotweed in there? Probably not. Even if there is that going to damage the house? No. So it's just being real, like having like a level head. But at the same time, being a surveyor, you're asking me to be a roofer, a carpenter, a plasterer, a like damp
Plumber.
specialist, structural
Yeah.
engineer, plumber, all these trades in one. And it's impossible. You can't do it. So I know a little about a lot. And like something I try to get across to my clients is I might get something wrong because I can't be an expert in everything. It's impossible. But know that I'm doing my absolute best, and everything I tell you, I truly believe. So that's as good as a gamble as it is, I think you can take. In my head, yeah, it's almost an impossible job to be able to do this completely perfect.
Yeah. No. I fully subscribe to that again, because it goes back down to every property is different and must be treated. Every property is different and must be treated appropriately. And within all of that, you know, I've got a house on the market right now that's bang on the money from an evidence perspective. It's been now on the market 10 days and I'm shitting myself because I've only got two viewers. And I'm like, oh my God, this is bad. But again, every property is different, must be treated appropriately, and not always the same thing comes out just because the process generally delivers what I normally do. So obviously now I'm having to go, right, plan B, what do I do now to get this house sold? But here's a question for you. Should every seller vendor get a survey as well?
In my opinion, but it's complex. There's a lot of discussion right now about seller surveys. They're doing the home selling, buying and selling consultation, and they're talking a lot about seller surveys. They're talking about the Scottish model. I'm very cautious of it from a mandated perspective. If you have a grade 1 listed property and you want to do a survey to see what the issues are to make sure that your sale can go smoothly and you have the money to do it, do that. But understand the limitations of it, where that survey is yours. You can't sell it on to the buyer. And all the estate agents listening, you can't sell surveys on. So it's just yours. It's for you to carry out your repairs, hopefully good repairs, and bring the property to market. Fine. But if a seller has to get a survey, they're just going to go with the cheapest or the one that's not going to raise any issues. And then they're going to be, like everyone says, not worth the paper they're written on, because they're just going to be copy and paste jobs, useless information. And then if a buyer gets a survey on top of that because they don't trust it, then you get conflict. You'll have surveyor against surveyor. You're then not getting legals involved, and it's just a nightmare. But I do think there is a way around it, which was brought up to me recently because I've been very anti-seller survey. And they said, what if, I think it's Denmark has it where it's like the seller is liable up to 10 years for any missed defects. Where I'm like, okay, like I could hear about that, because then it's in the seller's best interest as well to disclose any issues. And then like I've done surveys where guys, people did clearly try to hide something. Like I've gone into properties and they've got 15 candles on. I'm like, I'm a handsome guy, but come on, like you don't have to seduce me. It's like, I know you're trying to hide the smell of damp. And it's like, I don't even have that good a nose. I probably couldn't smell it. But like, this is so obvious now that I'm going to find it. And of course I find it eventually. It's like, I don't know if I would have found that because it was painted. It was like, but because of that, or like I did one on LinkedIn, a guy parked his car super close to the wall. And I'm like, I don't believe that you actually park that close to your wall. Do you mind moving your car? And I see them go, damn it. And it's like, yeah, it's like, I'm gonna like, don't try to hide things. And I'll go to my client and tell them that. I'll say like, look, they were trying to hide things from you. These are the things I found. I'm an imperfect human. It's a visual inspection. There could be further things. If there's wardrobes, there's all these things, you might move them and find problems. And that normally scares off buyers. You just don't want to do that. So I can see a big argument for if we're doing the seller survey. One, if you are selling a high market property, you probably do want to get something done, or if you know that your property is in distress, so you can just present everything. Surveyors are cautious of that because they know that they don't want the buyer to rely on that information. And they don't want the buyer to get a survey that then contradicts their survey. So they are cautious of doing those services most of the time. But I think if the seller is responsible for the property they sell on, then there's less conflict. Because as well,
Yeah.
like if you're trying to go into a property where someone's trying to sell it, and I'll have to be there with the seller who's paid me, then they are my boss. I'm responsible to them. And I have to sit there and go, oh, I don't really want to tell you this, but there's this problem. And they go, that's not a problem. And now you're arguing with this person in their house. It's just not helpful.
Yeah, and it is a really interesting topic because I am, as you've heard in this podcast, and of course probably on the TikToks as well, I'm very like try to be as transparent. If I know something, I'm going to say it, right? And I'm very much in favour of when the home information packs came about. I was well up for that. It was executed wrongly. Agents didn't want to do it. It was about property comes to market. I'll get it on tomorrow. Yeah. No appetite to actually start looking at maybe the title or start looking at maybe any certificates that are required, building regs or fence certificates, or, suddenly not really looking at it at all, not really wanting to know anything about the property. Just get it on and we'll deal with it later. So I'm very much like pro, let's get as much information as we possibly can to make it hard and horrible for absolutely everybody, full of stress in the very beginning, which means if everyone knows, we're now going to go, right, there's that pot of gold, which is either the completion of this property or your purchase. Yeah, it's just over there. And we now can walk to it and everyone's a winner. But again, you're obviously far more experienced than me when it comes to surveys and the ramifications and consequences, and that makes complete sense what you're saying. So, but
There's nothing worse than leaving a survey to the last second. The amount of time, one of the questions I ask a vendor when I go in is like, where are you at in this process? And if they're like, oh, we're just waiting for you, I'm like, that's a terrible place to be. Because if I flag anything,
yeah,
everyone's going to be angry. And everyone thinks they're right at the finish line. It's like, get a survey done early, like ideally as soon as possible, but at latest as soon as you get the mortgage valuation done. And just find out if there's anything that's wrong, because you just don't want to waste anyone's time. It's like everyone's time is valuable.
Exactly. So time kills deals, right? Pure sales. Yeah, time kills deals. So when a buyer is looking to buy one of my clients' properties, this is why I front load everything with you can't get on the market with me, or the first viewings won't happen from 4 weeks from the day of instruction if I don't have a waiting list, which I currently do, right? And you basically have to follow that process. But part of the reason for doing that, making sure that the seller has everything that they need to be able to physically sell the house. So an absolute full contract package. And we've looked at everything to within an inch of its life, because I want every single buyer of mine, and they agree to this, that they must have a survey booked in 2 weeks, within 2 weeks of that property going under offer. Yeah. And a couple of reasons. One, if they're using a mortgage, they need to pass the hard credit check. So that ignites a survey. But equally, that survey is so important, as you just mentioned, to be able to highlight as many things. And a buyer's appetite for tolerance in terms of what they're willing to accept, what they're not willing to accept, is going to be different from each. And I'd rather know that something comes up on surveys like is tragic and chaos and dramas. I'd rather know that 2 weeks after a property gets under offer, because I've still got a chance to still maximize the value of that property to another buyer, versus drag it out at the 11th hour. As you say, something comes up and we're all stuffed and we've all spent money and we've all wasted our time and everyone hates each other and we're all just like staring at each other like we want to fight one another. Yeah, I'm in complete agreement. But here's a question for you. My last one, right? I know you're a busy man. How much should a survey actually cost?
Kind of almost got into it earlier, where you said that like get a level 3, like just get the best money can buy. And the thing I've been saying, there's 2 things I kind of say. One is, if you want to know how much you should pay for a survey, ask someone who got a bad one, because they will say as much as you need to get a good one. Because it's not just about cost, it's about just headache and heartbreak and stress. And just your home is supposed to be your safe place that you can go to and be comfortable. And when it's in disarray for some reason, like, yes, you can sue a surveyor. It will take years. It will be a massive headache. You do not want to do it. The surveyor doesn't want to do it. You don't want to do it. You want it just to be done and move into your house. So there's that to be said. And also, like when I first started out, like one thing you can ask any surveyor, what's the difference between a level 2 and level 3 survey? And you will get a different answer from almost every surveyor, or a very vague one that is just not very clear. And it's because it is so different based on how competent the surveyor is and how thorough the surveyor is. If you got a level 3 survey from one of my mentors, I won't say me because I'm humble, from one of my mentors, and compare that to a level 3 survey from anyone doing 10 surveys a week, they would be night and day difference, but they're commoditized because they both say level 3 on the front. but they are not the same thing. And the same thing for level 2s. I've seen fresh graduates who will spend 5 hours at the property meticulously going over their notes, doing a level 2. Their level 2 will look better than an FREX 30 years experience who's just had enough and he's a bit bored of it. So it's got so much more to do with who's doing the survey than the level. Now, do I think you need a level 3 survey on a 1990s semi? Probably not. You probably just want to know if there's anything major. But if you're going, I say really solid wall and earlier, so like 1930s if you're in London and earlier, then you're going to be wanting a level 3 because there are like just damp just becomes an issue. And it's a false economy as well, because you might say, okay, £500 for level 2, £1,000 for level 3. I want to save £500. But if the level 2 comes back saying you need a damp specialist, you need a structural engineer, like how much more are you going to spend out on this? And then it all could just take too long that it cost you the sale. And now you're back at square one. So it's like, just get someone who can give you it properly. Like recently, as much as I hate it, I had to recommend a damp specialist because I was like, I don't know what's going on here. And we need more information that I just don't have on a visual inspection. And I hate saying it because I don't want you to have to spend more money. But for me, it's a last resort. For others, it is a nice, easy thing they can tick off. So choose this. What do I say? Don't buy the menu, pay for the chef. So that's my general gist.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely right. Daniel Knight, otherwise known as Dan the Surveyor Man on TikTok, thank you so much for coming on this podcast, mate. You've been an absolute pleasure, and I love your insights.
Thank you.
So here is the bottom line. Surveys don't kill deals, panic kills deals, silence kills deals, and agents who haven't prepared their seller properly definitely kill deals. And what Daniel's shown today is simple. A survey is about risk, not drama. I always front load all the information. Why? Because I want buyers to have an informed decision before they make an offer. That keeps me in control. Daniel, really appreciate you, mate. That was a proper conversation. And if this has sharpened you up listening right now, send it to another agent who still blames the surveyor when things go wrong. See you in the next episode.